Hello, I'm Hal Lublin.
And I'm Mark Gagliardi.
Since the dawn of humanity, one issue has gone unsettled. With the fate of the world in the balance, we're here to settle, once and for all,
daylight saving versus standard time.
That's right. Don't worry, everyone. We got this.
Podcasts should have a theme song. Podcasts should not have a theme song. Yes, they should. No, they shouldn't. They sound good. Yeah, but people are just going to skip past it. You know what? You're right. We got this.
Daylight saving time versus
standard time.
Well, Hal, we just turned our clocks back this week, and this one got me thinking about this topic. Did you enjoy your extra hour of sleep that you got? Just yesterday, we got that extra hour.
Had I slept, I would have loved it, but I'm cursed with this Fitbit that the devil is forcing me to wear until I die.
Yeah.
That tells me exactly how much sleep I got. And I will tell you, it was
get much.
I think it was like 5 hours, maybe 4 hours.
Why'd you get so little sleep?
I don't know. Just keep waking up early. It's a curse running through our household. We both wake up at like 3:30 now.
Well, speaking of waking up early and running, I am very curious your thoughts on this topic as a person who now gets up early to go and exercise. So I'm so curious your thoughts on how this is going to go. Hal, I'm going to tell you a story.
Oh, I love a story.
It's a story of 2 years ago.
Oh, okay.
In the U.S. Senate. Now, I know that we don't talk about politics on this show. It's rare that we talk about Senate bills or laws being passed.
Right.
But there was a bill in the Senate 2 years ago in 2022 called the Sunshine Protection Act. And the Sunshine Protection Act is all about getting rid of the switch between daylight savings time and standard time. And the Senate voted on that bill. Can you guess how that vote went? Like which way the Senate went on this vote? Did it divide it by party? How do you think that particular vote went in the Senate?
I would say it was overwhelmingly in favor
Of
eliminating the switch.
How not only was it overwhelmingly in favor, this is the first Senate bill I can think of, and I'm sure there are others, but this is the first one that I can think of, aside from those resolutions to name a day, ice cream day or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
This was unanimous. The Senate unanimously voted to get rid of the daylight savings time switch.
Right.
The bill has since stalled in the House. And the reason that this bill stalled in the House is what we are going to settle today, because we got this. Even if the federal government, doesn't got this, we got this. The House could not decide whether to keep standard time or daylight savings time.
Why?
Because there are pros and cons to both. Which is the whole point of this show and why we are going to talk about this today. First, what are your first impressions? What are your thoughts in general going into this episode about daylight savings time?
I do enjoy it being bright later. It feels like a longer day is nicer. There is something to how close we are to the sun. There's a certain, because it's an elliptical orbit. It's not perfectly circular.
Yeah.
And because of that, I think elliptical is correct. Yeah, no, it is elliptical in its shape. Mm-hmm. There are times where it is closer and times where it is farther away. And I think that may affect to a certain degree how much sunlight we receive. So really, we're talking about where are we shuffling the hours. I do prefer, I like it to be lighter a little bit early. You brought up running. I do have an update there.
Yeah.
Number one, I'm finally back to running after the 5 hours I spent in a dentist's chair last Wednesday under sedation and intubated.
Did you, in fact, want to be sedated?
I did, because I am a dental chicken. I'd not been to the dentist in a long time.
Oh.
Do you want to know what I had done?
Yes. Forget daylight savings time for right now. And forgive me for not asking how you were at the beginning of this episode and just diving right in.
Easy to forget because I'm perfect now. 5 crowns.
Like Freddie Freeman over here.
5 crowns.
Ooh, 5 crowns. I love that game.
A few fillings and a root canal. It was supposed to take 3 hours.
What define a few?
I don't, like 3.
Okay.
3 or 4.
I guess, yeah, a few is 3. A couple is 2. A few is 3.
Yeah. So I go, and initially they're like, this will take like 3 hours. Now, for IV sedation, if you are a dental scaredy like me, you're paying extra for that, and you're paying by the hour. So the anesthesiologist, who's a great guy, really good at his job, he's like, I'm going to charge you for 3 hours. If it's less, I'll refund. You know, if it's more, if it's like an extra half hour, I'm not going to do anything. Okay. So it wound up, when I come to, which I remember little bits and pieces of, I remember being in the waiting room afterwards and standing up and getting instructions and being told what happened. Except I was not standing. I was in a wheelchair. I was not permitted to stand up yet. I don't remember from there getting to the car or getting in the car. I think I talked to Jennifer for I remember 90 seconds of the ride home. I barely remember going up the stairs inside the house, but then I sat down in my easy chair that you've been in, the recliner.
Yeah, it's a delightful recliner.
The other thing is, they gave me Novocaine. So I had numbness all around the mouth.
Oh my gosh.
And was coming out of having been in sedation. It was very weird. I was not steady on my feet for the rest of the day and into the night.
I get it, man. Anesthesia is a big deal.
What is true, and what I do remember and is accurate, is it was 5 hours long because some of the things that were supposed to be fillings wound up being 2 more crowns. So it was originally supposed to be 3 crowns, a root canal, and a bunch of fillings. And it wound up being, so I have 2 on the bottom 2 on the back of each side have temporary crowns in them. And then 1 on the top left back has a temporary.
How does
the temporary
feel?
Crowns, it's weird. Ken was describing it as like a chewing gum sensation, which it is. It feels like it's not permanent. Yeah. It also feels like my bite is off. Like these teeth don't meet on the right side yet. So everything's not there. And
so if you sound weird in this episode, then that's why. It's because your teeth don't do what they normally do.
I guess, but it's in the back. If that's affecting anything here, then we have bigger problems. But there's a lot you're not supposed to eat because you don't want them to come out.
Right. I had a temporary crown once, and it was, not only did it sort of feel like chewing gum, it looked like chewing gum. Because
it does. They're like chewing gum.
This ain't Michelangelo's David. This is Michelangelo's student making his class version of David on day 1.
Yeah. It's killing me not to be able to floss back there. I can't use my water pick, which I've been really excited, really enjoy. Like I have a whole routine now cleaning my teeth, and
I just got a water pick.
Be healthy. Oh, it's the best, isn't it?
The water pick is the greatest, man.
Do you do the floss, then brush, then water pick?
No, I don't do anything but water pick. That's all I do now.
Oh, no. Here's what you do.
I don't brush. I don't floss. I don't eat. It's just water pick.
It's how you
water
drink.
Pick.
You look like Jabba the Hutt.
Water pick.
You know how to throw out and you just put it in like,
except I'm shooting it into my mouth, and I don't fill that thing with water. It's just Diet Coke going into my mouth via a tiny little nozzle. All dang day.
Your teeth are going to look like a rotting dock. I'm so excited for you. But all of this to say...
Smile for me. Show me those pylons.
All this to say, I've started running again. It took me a while before I could go back. But what I've been doing lately, because I'm having tendon issues in my right ankle that I'm in physical therapy for, is I wear a brace and I've stopped running outside. The park is right next to a Y that I'm a member of. So now I go in and I run on the treadmill and I do 60 minutes.
Oh, great.
And I'm going faster than I've ever gone. I burn crazy calories. I'm dripping sweat. It's great.
Fantastic.
But the upshot of that is if it's dark out in the morning, and I've run in the pitch black dark a number of times, that's not a factor anymore. But it is, if you're an early bird and you want to do something early in the morning, there's a magic to being there when the sun rises and getting those first peaks of light. But the pitch black at 5:30 in the morning ain't it. It's not fun. I like the sunrise to be like between 6 and 6:30, like in that area rather than like 7:30.
Sure. And if you're in New York City, the sunrise on December 20th, which is the winter solstice, which is the shortest day of the year, sunrise on that day is at 7:15 a.m. So if we did get rid of standard time and just go to daylight savings time, that would make it 8:15 a.m. that New York City gets its early wake up.
Okay. Now I want to see
sunrise.
Now I'm interested. Like when is sunset?
Now you're interested in this topic, Hal?
No. I'm like, when is sunset supposed? So sunrise is 6:18 a.m. tomorrow. So that's the trade-off, right? Is it gets dark much earlier. We have sunset at 4:57. Way too early. Way too early. I think like the sweet spot for it getting dark is like, I want sunlight from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock. Daylight savings doesn't quite make that happen, does it?
No, Hal, I realize what you want. It sounds great. I want all of that too. I want to eat whatever I want and not have any calories and have cake put muscle on my body. But that's not how it works. We are tilted. We have an angle away from the sun. We spend half of the year getting, the days getting shorter and half of the year the days getting longer. We're not getting any extra daylight in the wintertime. They're just shorter. The days are just going to be shorter. So it's about where do we put that hour. So a little bit of history, a little bit of backstory. This started in the U.S. In 1918 was when we first started doing it. The notion first came around in the 18th century of, hey, the days are longer in the summertime. We, as people who use candles for light, are spending an early part of the day sleeping when we're asleep for the first hour of sunlight. We're wasting that hour of sunlight. Why don't we bump that hour of sunlight to the end of the day when we're actually able to use it? And that idea took hold, so much so that it was locked in by LBJ in the 1960s. And then in 1974, because of an energy crisis, there was 1 year where Richard Nixon got rid of standard time altogether, and we just stayed on daylight savings time.
Right.
And people did not like it. I'm curious about this because I've heard a lot of people advocating for staying on daylight savings time all year round, but people didn't like it specifically for that way too late sunrise. We're going to have an early sunset regardless, but it's the way too late sunrise that people did not like because they'd have to send their kids to school on the bus in the dark. They'd have to go to work in the dark.
Yep.
And biologically, according to a Vanderbilt study, biologically, your rhythms are better in the mornings. Your rhythms want morning light. Just biologically, it's better for your body to have light in the morning. It leads to better sleep. And these are all of the reasons that have been given for keeping standard time during the winter time. Regardless of whether you switch to daylight savings time in the summer or not, that's the argument for keeping standard time in the winter. That said, there are a lot of arguments against it as well.
Can I offer that this is actually a three-way discussion?
Sure.
One is let's keep standard. When you say let's keep standard time, are you saying let's keep the switch?
No. When I'm saying that's why I said regardless of whether you switch to daylight savings time, standard time is those are the benefits of having standard time during the shorter day months.
Okay. So the argument we're having is the argument we're discussing. We're settling for other people. We're not arguing between ourselves. We are the
right. No, we are settling this because Congress couldn't do it, Hal.
Correct. We're doing the job of the government.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Is the third way that you are pitching scrapping the Senate bill that passed and maintaining the current system?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. And I have...
What are the benefits of that?
I have no studies to back this up. Yeah. I understand the appeal of it being later. Also, daylight savings was extended to November... within the last, I think, 6 years or at least last 10 years,
was it?
So that it would be after Halloween. Because there were times, I think, where it fell before Halloween.
Oh,
and that way it allowed kids to keep the light and keep it sacred. Well, yes. When you're older, though, it's fun to go out it's Halloween. It's supposed to be dark. Now it is not as safe because you got a bunch of people dressed up as like Draculas walking around wearing a black cape that blends into the night. Just as Dracula wants to, but Dracula doesn't live in fear of being hit by a Ford Aerostar.
That's exactly it. And kids, aside from the Ford Aerostar, live in fear of that magic hour called sunset when they know they're going to have to go home and be done trick-or-treating. Or shortly thereafter. It's all the trick-or-treating is based around when sunset happens, right? So if you get a little bit of extra trick-or-treating time in the evening. By the way, you know who lobbied for this switch?
Dracula?
Candy companies. They wanted
sure.
trick-or-treating to last longer, so they
they
really lobbied to change this. And that was one thing in researching this episode. It's funny because it doesn't break down along any lines other than businesses for whom it is good at night and businesses for whom darkness is good and businesses for whom light is good. So it's not right versus left. It's not young versus old or male versus female or any of those things. It is simply my business benefits from this. Your business benefits from the other thing. And that's who's been funding this battle and pushing this battle forward, which of course it is.
We're definitely susceptible to the candy lobby, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah. Listen, if the I will sit in the candy lobby and just on the cushy chairs and eat Tootsie Rolls all day.
Isn't
Happy
it weird
to.
that the dish they have out has crudité?
Yeah, it is odd.
Because they want you to
Weird
pay for the candy. They're like, oh, you want some
big
carrots?
vegetable.
Red pepper strips?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you go to you go to the Dentist Association, it's just a big cotton candy machine. Invented by a dentist. Yeah. Cotton candy invented by a dentist.
Was it really?
True. Yes.
Of course it was.
The ultimate marketing tool.
I don't know if I can. I feel like I have to take whatever you say about the dentist with a grain of salt, because you did just enter a dentist's office upright and leave a dentist's office in a wheelchair. So maybe you have a grudge.
I'll tell you,
against.
There's nothing I enjoy more than being under for a procedure. Just I don't want to be awake. I don't want to know any part of it. I don't want, and this guy was real good, and I thought this was going to be the time I would get to count backwards from 100. I even asked. I was like, all right, because he numbed my hand before he did the IV, which
by sitting on it, right?
Yeah, he sat on it until it went numb, and then he put a needle in. But you know, when you do the back of the hand, that's super sensitive. It's just painful. Yeah. Once he numbed it, he could fish around for the vein, no problem. I'm not looking, but I know he's in there. And then, but I'm like, I really want to count backwards from 100. He's like, okay, well, I'm going to give you a couple things here just to calm you, just to relax you, and then we'll get you under. I was like, okay. He's like, all right, you can start. Go ahead and start the countdown. And then I woke up and I was standing in a lobby.
But
Jennifer's version of the story is way better. Next time she's on the show, you'll have to ask her about the process of me waking up, because it took a while.
Oh. Delightful. Yeah, man, the anesthesia is no joke, and it is very weird when you come out of it. You just start counting, and then maybe next time you'll get to count longer. Maybe the next time you go in, he'll wait a few seconds before pushing down on the plunger. He's like, man, this guy seemed really excited about counting last time, and he did not even get to 98. So let's give him let's give him a solid. Wait till he gets to like 40 and is sweating it. Then I'll push the button and knock him out.
39, 30.
What? Boy, it is fast.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about some of the benefits of, because we are going to go over all three of these. I think it is smart to talk about whether we should keep the change or not. But let's look at some of the benefits. If we're stepping back and just as simply as possible, looking at it as, which is better, darkness in the morning or an extra hour of dark in the morning or an extra hour of dark in the evening. Mm-hmm. And that feels like a fairly quantifiable approach.
Sure.
For example, we mentioned before that morning light is better for the human body for sleep and for your sleep rhythms and your sleep patterns and habits.
Health benefit.
But seasonal affective disorder is very much exacerbated by having it be darker earlier in the evening.
Is part of seasonal affective disorder, and I'm asking this just because I don't know and I'm trying to be educated, does it also have to do with the weather?
It's specifically, that might
specifically addresses something that's a result of going to standard time and it being darker. Right. There is something that's kind of soul crushing about you get off of work, because most people work until 5 or 6 if they're in an office job. Some people work all sorts of hours in between. But the general, when you think of like the 40-hour-a-week office worker, they're done at 5 or 6. And if you're in standard time, by time you leave work, it's already dark out. Yeah. And that is like, it makes you feel like you've spent twice as much time in the work environment than you actually have.
Well, sure, because depending on where you live, you've got major swings from, in the summertime, you can have a 16-hour daylight, And in the
Right.
wintertime, you can have an 8-hour daylight. That's
Yes.
or in this part of the world, the equator, it's even all the way through, so you don't really notice it. And way north and way south in Alaska and in the South Pole or in the deep in South America, you're dealing with such huge, vast swings.
Yeah.
This is actually an argument that Neil deGrasse Tyson made in favor of eliminating the whole thing because the swings are so massive that 1 hour. We're talking right now kind of about like it just generally sucking to have less light, but that 1 hour swing doesn't really do all that much.
In the larger
So-
sense, that's right.
In the larger sense, it doesn't. And another thing I want to point out, another argument in favor of keeping one of them year round in everywhere except Arizona in the United States. Not a fun statistic. There's a spike in heart attacks the day after the spring forward calendar change.
Is it because, like me, they woke up and forgot they had Glenn Ross rehearsal in college and showed up an hour late and felt awful and were sweaty?
Yeah, exactly. Will you go to breakfast? Go to breakfast.
That's who I played. I was
I know
Williamson.
you played Williamson. I played Shelley the Machine Levine.
Oh man,
It's
when are we
going
going to do
back
that
to
production
Broadway. I don't know. It's going back to Broadway. You know this?
without us?
Yeah, without us. They got stupid Bill Burr and stupid Kieran Culkin and a bunch of other
yeah.
really great stupid actors.
Is Kieran Culkin Ricky Roma?
Yeah, I believe
Yeah,
so.
that's a good role for him.
Yeah, he's going to be great in it.
Man, he's built for Mamet.
Right? Because, he's got that photographic memory, right? Have you heard this?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, Kieran Culkin, apparently used to drive Brian Cox crazy because Kieran Culkin would read his lines once and then be off book. So he could just like goof around. And yeah, he was actually the one that pitched shooting that one big epic episode like a play. He was like, let's just shoot it like a play. We'll do it all at once. We'll get a bunch of cameras going. And everybody's like, yeah, Kieran, because it's easy for you to memorize your lines so fast. That was really funny. I want to talk a little. Did we have a thread we needed to close there, or can I? I'm trying to remember.
No. I think we meandered back. I meandered us
Good.
away, and you meandered us back. We're good.
I meandered us back to back.
You reandered us. I
Ooh.
meandered. You reandered.
I like that word, reandering.
Yes.
So here's my question: if the question is, do we want our extra hour of darkness in the morning or in the evening? Right. We looked briefly at the seasonal affective disorder versus the effects on sleep patterns. I'd like to point out also that we currently spend 8 months in daylight savings time and 4 months in standard time, which I think is wild. I thought it was like half and half. It's 2/3 of the year we're in daylight savings time. It's March.
Really? I'm trying to think
Yeah.
because we just switched on November 3rd. Then
Then it
November,
changes in
December is
March.
1 month. December it changes in March.
Changes in March.
Huh.
Yeah.
I don't know why in my head. Did it used to change later?
I think like you said before, it used to change. It used to change in the fall earlier.
Well, it fell back earlier. I
Yeah.
do.
So
man,
maybe
that
it's
extra
brought
hour.
forward later too.
That extra hour. Can we just continually move back an hour because it is really nice because you have especially because it's always on a Sunday and you get that extra hour back. It's just a pleasure. I want that part of it, but I also want, I'm looking across right now and I look out my window to my left. I can see the apartment building that is across the way from my home. And I see somebody has already decorated, probably did it on Friday, put up their Christmas lights. So I'm looking out there in the dark. I just see beautiful, sparkling color lights, my favorite, and it makes me real happy. And I don't want to have to wait until. I don't want to there are times.
Wait
where
a
you kind of want it
minute,
to be
Hal. You're
darker.
saying you want your dark hour in the evening specifically
For
so you
Christmas.
can look at Christmas lights?
Yeah,
All right, I don't hate that, but let me reander
not the
us.
way I thought you were going to go. Please.
Let me reander us back to that hour being either in the morning or the evening.
Right.
I was thinking about this, and part of it to me is what is happening in that extra dark hour. And is it better for that extra dark hour to happen, or is it better for that extra dark hour to happen in the evening or the morning, or the extra light hour, however you want to look at it? The extra hour of darkness being a nuisance in the morning is happening during a time when you are either on your way to work or to school, usually within a routine, right? Whether that routine is a commute or getting to the office or getting to your place of work. I would argue that to get that, it is a better trade-off to have that be the dark hour because it's a more predictable hour. So if that hour is in the dark, at least it's happening within what you're doing within that hour is more predictable. When that extra hour happens in the evening, that's, for kids in schools, it's extracurricular sports and activities and things. For coming home from work, it's driving home from work. It's seeing your family after you get off of work at the end of the day. And the reason that they actually tacked this on originally was because people wanted daylight during their playtime. It was during their work time that they didn't care if it was darker. But playtime, you wanted more playtime in the light. So I would argue that it's better to have, it might be, again, we're trying to figure this out. I would argue it might be better to have the extra hour of light in the evening when you are doing things that bring you joy. And the extra hour of dark in the morning is fine because you're doing more routine things at that time. And furthermore, to throw out on top of that, there's not a lot of people getting up and mugging people during the dark hour in the morning. The expectation is a lowering of crime if this is made permanent and the darker hours continue to happen in the morning and we get that extra hour of light in the evening.
So you think there are a lot of 6 p.m. muggings? Is that what we're saying?
This isn't me. This is just the research that I was doing this afternoon. There are people that point that out as a possibility.
I do struggle with that, and I will tell you why. I was just feeling my knee, by the way, which I was like, why is this rough? And then I realized I ate off of my stairs before it completely landed on my knee on a rug. Anyway, I'm fine. No pain. You can, if you really...
This episode is just Hal's ailments. What is happening? You're turning into Robo-podcaster. You have crowns all over your teeth. You're going to wind up with titanium knees.
Thank you for not ordering from MeUndies.
You know what? Hold on. Hold that thought for a second.
Yeah.
We're going to throw to a break right now. Have a doctor come in and check Hal out. And then when we come back, you can finish that thought. We'll be right back.
Fine.
Somewhere in an alternate universe where Hollywood is smarter.
And the Emmy nominees for Outstanding Comedy Series are Jetpackula, Airport Marriott, Thruple, Dear America, We've Seen You Naked, and Allah in the Family.
In our stupid universe, you can't see any of these shows, but you can listen to them on Dead Pilots Society, the podcast that brings you hilarious comedy pilots that the networks and streamers bought but never made. Journey to the alternate television universe of Dead Pilots Society on MaximumFun.org.
Oh, darling, why won't you accept my love?
My dear, even though you are a duke, I could never love you. You borrowed a book from me and never returned it.
Save yourself from this terrible fate by listening to Reading Glasses.
We'll help you get those borrowed books back and solve all your other reader problems.
Reading Glasses, every Thursday on Maximum Fun.
Okay, we're back. How was the doctor visit? You okay, Hal? Hal, wake up. Hal.
So they had to put me under for the checkup. What I was going to say before to meander and reander is that if you track the thread of this podcast from episode 1, I think you can see me physically go on a real roller coaster, both in terms of general health. And now I'm the healthiest I've ever been, but also I'm like a car that I just had the oil changed. Everything seems to be good. Oh, the tires fell off. Fuel injection system is throwing smoke. Why is this happening? I take such good care of it. Anyway, I think I sort of reject the idea of crime at 6 p.m., 7 p.m. If it's dark out, there's going to be more crime.
Yeah, that's called dusking, by the way. If you mug someone at the moment that the sun is setting, that's called dusking someone.
That's dusking. Okay, yeah. There's more dusking happening.
Sure.
That's a time of day when more people tend to be awake. 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, 5, 6, 7 in the morning. fewer people. I mean, I don't know. I guess I don't know. I've never mugged anybody or been part of the mugging lifestyle, but I can't imagine it's like, I get up every day at 4:30, so I'm ready to catch people at 5. Like, people aren't out.
The hours, it's 4 and 5 in the morning aren't counting. But everybody, you're getting up at the same time. It's just whether it's dark or light. So it's not like 7:15 in the morning suddenly becomes 4:15 in the morning.
You think if Bruce Wayne's parents had taken him to a matinee that there'd be no Batman? Is that what you're saying?
I think that, you know what? Yeah, maybe. Maybe that's awesome. Gotham City would not be the same place without Batman, and Batman would not have existed if his parents were like, you know what? We're going to go to the Mommy and Me movie instead of just dragging our son to the evening show that you have to wear your pearls for.
Yeah, nobody wears their pearls to the matinee.
No, nobody wears pearls to the matinee. Speaking of entertainment, can you guess who in the 1950s and 60s were lobbying against daylight savings time in the summertime?
Howdy Doody and Mickey Mouse.
Think wider and think on the grand scheme of motion pictures, specifically movies and theaters.
Alfred Hitchcock and Walt Disney.
Drive-ins, Hal. Drive-ins.
Oh, drive-ins. Oh, that's true.
Daylight savings time killed the drive-in theater.
Yeah, and then COVID brought it back, and I was going to a drive-in to see a bunch of movies, and you know what?
Drive-ins.
There is something to, like, the sun is setting. It's a little bit harder to see, but most of the shows were like 7. That you got enough dusk going on. What happens is you get people driving in late. You can sneak it. Like, if you're late to a regular movie, nobody cares. The only people who care are the 4 or 5 people you got to walk in front of to get to your seat, unless you're on the aisle. But at a drive-in, everybody's driving in with the headlights on.
Oh, you got to know the rules, man. You got to turn those headlights off.
You can't.
You've been sitting the whole time you've been sitting in there in the ticket line. Turn your headlights off. Let your eyes adjust. You're gonna be fine. You're not gonna hit anything.
I'm so upset that there isn't the actual drive-ins are like either down in Orange County or way out to the east, like almost Inland Empire.
Man,
I wish there was a good one out in the San Fernando Valley. Now we both live here.
My favorite one closed. Sadly, I had a drive-in that it didn't close, but it went to seasonal and like special events.
Oh,
which is the Vineland Drive-In out in City of Industry. It's 4 screens.
Yeah.
A central concession stand, and they had an early, a late, and a super late. So like in the wintertime, it was great too, because you'd have like a 6 o'clock, an 8 o'clock, and a 10 o'clock. Yeah, and you could bounce around, and of course, they didn't care. Technically, there's a sign that's like, no theater switching. They don't care. Go see 2 movies. It's fine.
Who's going to stop you?
Yeah, exactly. You're in a car. If they're like, get him, you can just drive away and flee the scene after your first movie during the credits.
Yeah. That's how I saw the Batman at a drive-in. I saw the Eternals. I saw Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness.
I once stopped. I was visiting a friend who lives in Rancho Cucamonga. I was driving back from Rancho Cucamonga, checked the time, and was like, you know what? I'm going to be passing by the Vineland Drive-In at exactly the right time. I literally pulled over, watched Wakanda Forever. No, I literally pulled over, watched Black Panther for like the 3rd or 4th time, and then drove home.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I watched King Kong there in the rain. Oh, man, it was so cool.
Beautiful.
Anyway, drive-ins benefit from standard time. Also benefiting from standard time, one U.S. state. There are 2 U.S. states that do not celebrate, that do not use daylight savings time. Do you know what those 2 states are?
Arizona's one.
Yes, it is. Do you know why?
Just to be difficult? Or does it have something to do with, like, it throws off the crystals that they charged? Is that it? Is it something like that? Am I close?
That's in Tucson.
Okay.
In Phoenix, it's a different reason.
Oh.
Do you know what Arizona does not want? An extra hour of sun.
Oh, that's true, because it's very hot there.
Yeah.
The other place is Alaska, right? Alaska doesn't have... Or is it Hawaii?
The other place is the other extreme. It's Hawaii, which is right by the equator, so it doesn't matter. They're on island time. Who cares about this? It's more trouble than it's worth. It's not really getting them anything.
It's island time.
It's island time, man. From producer Ken Plume, He knows how to speak to my personal favorites. Theme park fireworks shows benefit from earlier darkness. And so I'm assuming does the Main Street Electrical Parade. There are things that benefit from earlier darkness.
Right.
There are things that human beings, I would argue, are not necessarily one of them.
I would say safety and seasonal affective disorders are better reasons to move entirely to daylight savings than the fireworks can start earlier. Because if your trip to Disney is centered, or whatever park or whatever place is centered around a fireworks show, you've built in whatever time it starts. Like, you're going to that fireworks show. Not the way Ken is like a wild dog loose in the park. I remember the first time I went with him, I was like, oh, well, he has the pass for all the parks. He knows everything. He knows all the secrets. And the first time I'd been there, I'd ever gone to Disneyland back in 1992. My dad had a guide that was like, here's what you do. You do this ride, this ride, this ride. And then you never have to wait in line. And by golly, it worked. I was like,
Great.
Ken's got it figured out. Then we go there and he's like,
guide?
He's like, this one has a short line. Oh, let's go over here. This one has a short line. Like, there's no knowledge. It's just wandering around until your legs fall off or they force you out of the park and riding everything.
Ken, I would assume you would have a system.
There's no system.
First of all,
there's no system.
Look,
not a strong one.
You rope drop, and then you go to the most the one that's going to have the longest line.
Yeah,
and then you avoid Fantasyland in the mid-afternoon, and then you hit stuff during the second run of the parade. Come on, man.
Yeah. Ken is claiming that I ignored his lesson. Yeah. There's no, you know what the lesson is? Be the one who's walking in front. That's the lesson.
Yeah. You know what I love about this too is Ken, like always when we're recording these episodes, frequently it's time for a break, time to bring it in.
Yeah.
This time it's just all caps disagreeing with Hal. Yelling at us. Yeah, text yelling.
Yeah. Oh, he's talking about how I had to use the bathroom. It was the 4th of July. I had to go something awful. The fireworks show is about to begin. You can't get anywhere in the park. The lines to use the bathroom are insane. I got to get from, what's the restaurant that has the buffet on Main Street? It's across from Jolly Holiday.
There's a buffet
Plaza
on
Inn.
Main Street?
The Plaza Inn. I'm trying to get from the Plaza Inn to Space Mountain because that's the place where I can use the bathroom. I barely make it. It's a tough seat. You've been eating Disney food all day, so you know how that goes. Then you're trying to come back. Dude, I couldn't use the Plaza Inn bathroom, Ken. He's rewriting history. He was too busy wandering around probably the restaurant looking at things like, oh, Goofy could be here soon. He didn't know. There was no extra, there was no play. No, I almost punched someone. I did not almost get punched. I
Hal, Reander, right. Hal.
Point is, I think there are things that are good arguments and more widely applicable arguments to either keep daylight savings or move entirely to standard time or to keep the mix. And I don't think when a fireworks show starts is one of them. I think some of them are more anecdotal than really applicable if we're trying to decide this.
How about this, Hal? I think aside from the heart attack rate going up every spring, I can throw a reason for eliminating not only the shift between daylight savings and standard time, but also eliminating that as an option for us. And I think there is a very good case for getting rid of it. I think it's why the Senate voted unanimously to get rid of the switch. And that is we have to write into every piece of code. I say we as a actor who has no knowledge of coding. We have to write into every piece of code a trigger for daylight savings time.
Right.
And if one program misses that trigger of code globally, and this is because some countries use it, some countries don't.
Yeah.
In a more globalized world, we are one messed up line of code away from a Y2K potentially happening at some point. I realize that sounds alarmist, but I'm taking it to its nth degree. But I do think that the reasons for getting rid of it outweigh the reasons for keeping it. The shift.
Yeah. Here, I'll make a brief argument for why I think there's something to the shift. And that is that there's something when you are a kid going to school, you come home, you do your homework, and then by then it's dinner time, dark out, and your night's pretty much done. If you're older, you might go hang out at a friend's house or do whatever. None of those are necessarily daylight dependent. And it makes the weekend maybe a little more precious in terms of having daylight hours to spend. The safety thing 100% is a valid argument against it. Daylight savings, having that extra time for it to be to have more sun, and having that coincide with when we are getting the most sunlight anyway, just makes sense in terms of it's summertime. There's something special to me and kind of sacred about it being summertime, about it getting dark later, about seeing lightning bugs show up as the sun is setting, and knowing it's later. And as a kid, you get to stay up later because you don't have school. There's something sort of precious about that. And there's also something to like, oh, it's cold and it got dark out. It just, and part of that is just experiential. It feels right. I don't know that I have the strongest argument based on fact or science, but there's a gut instinct in me that goes like, that's sort of the way it's supposed to be. And saying that out loud means that's not the way it should be. It just means it's the way it's always been for our lives. The other thing I think is in terms of it being later for kids to have activities, my sense of where child raising is now versus where it was when we were kids and maybe the generation right after us were kids is vastly different. Like, I'm sure like me, you had a lot of unsupervised time out and around your neighborhood. Yeah. And it was just like, well, be back at this time, or come back for dinner, or be nearby when I call you. And it feels like now we're either more aware of the dangers out there, or there is more danger out there, or that generation, as we've grown up and become parents, have been like, hey, I can't believe how unsupervised we were. And now it's a little bit more, I don't know if it's more regimented, or it's maybe there's less of that happening. Right. That's just a sense that I get, but I could be 100% wrong. I don't have kids. So, but do you get that sense as well? Is that something
I get
that
what you're
I
saying.
feel?
No, I absolutely, in my experiences, and again, we're two guys without kids talking about the child rearing effects of daylight savings time. But I get what you're saying, that it's a different world. You're not out and about hoping for daylight long enough to take your bike to the end of that trail in the woods that you like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's probably not happening as much. I do think that late in the day, you are generally going to be not less supervised, but less structured. I keep coming back to that simple question of when do I want my extra hour of light? I think, to me, it seems like it's more valuable at the end of the day because of that whole in the morning, things are more regimented. You know what I mean? Once school ends or once work ends, your day, for me or for many people, I'm sure, the day just kind of, every day is going to be different. From 5 p.m. until bedtime, every day could potentially be different. In the morning, things are probably more routine and more uniform. So I wouldn't mind the darkness there. I would prefer to have that extra hour of light later in the day. Because on that day I was talking about in New York City or anywhere up in the East Coast at that latitude, yes, your sunrise is going to be at 8:15 in the morning, but your sunset is going to be at 5:15 in the evening. This is on the shortest day of the year. Right. 8:15 in the morning to 5:15, as opposed to what it is now, which is 7:15 in the morning being sunrise and 4:15 being sunset. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I guess there's no way to get around the fact that it getting dark earlier, it causes seasonal affective disorder. It's, it's less safe on the roads. There are things about it that suck. Right. So where are we going to put that precious extra hour?
Yeah,
Again, I don't know. I don't feel like I'm advocating for one. I feel like I'm leaning toward one and thinking through this. But I can go in either direction.
I mean, I'm an early riser, so to me, it affects me more how much time I have in the morning, because that's more the time I have to myself. Like, think about what my day is, just to walk you through. Like, I wake up at 5 o'clock to be at the gym by 6, to be out of there by 7:15. Be home, showered, breakfast, working at 8 until 8:30 to 5:30, or 8 to 5:30, or 7:30 to 5, like whatever it needs to get done. I'm done at 5:30. Then today I'm recording with you until 8. So I don't see any day, like, no matter what time of year it is, it's dark out by the time my day is over. So the only time I get to have any light is in the morning. But that's not everybody's experience. Not everybody works a full-time job and hosts 3 different podcasts. So like their day is just every day I have is at least a 10-hour day. And that's fine. I'm privileged and honored to do it. I'm like very lucky, very aware of that. Mm-hmm. I also think when I think of exercising at a park, at this park in particular, which is like wide open, there's no real wooded area to get lost in. It's a soccer field and people are walking there. It doesn't matter. Like everybody starts the same time anyway. If it's dark, it's dark. If it's light out, it's light out. It really doesn't matter. So maybe that hour is just better apportioned later in the day. So I think I'm leaning to, and really when they were talking about getting rid of the changeover and just having daylight savings, I was like, well, that makes more sense. It just makes sense. Mm-hmm. Like you pointed out, we're using daylight savings for 8 months out of the year. We don't need those 4 hours really. It's really not like there are more practical applications for things like that than there are for it being dark early because I want to see the Christmas lights. I'll get to see them anyway. I'll just close all the shades in my house when my tree is up.
You know what, Hal? I'm going to go over there with a ladder and a ski mask and put extra Christmas lights on that house across from your window just so you get the glory of it to shine through. It can shine through a sunset and all the duskers out there.
One time somebody sped away from the police there and there was almost gunfire. So I wouldn't do that if I were you.
Fair enough.
There wasn't gunfire. They were like, stop. And they just like hit a car and then took off. I don't think they lived there.
Yeah, I imagine not.
Anyway,
so
all this to say,
closed.
I think it's, people of the world, we want you to suffer from seasonal affective disorder no longer. We want the children to play safely. We want you to feel like your day has just a little more time for you to enjoy the outdoors, whether that's a sunset dinner or going and taking a walk in the park after a stressful day to clear your head. Whatever it is, you should have more sunlight to do it. And that is why if everybody will just listen to us for once.
Yeah.
And not argue the point, then we would have daylight savings time all the time, and we just call it daylight time. I came up with that. Thank you. No,
Ken
it is
daylight saving, not saving.
We passed the savings on to you.
I want to know why he typed in all caps, Hal almost got punched. By who?
Somebody was a jerk. I don't remember what it was.
Was it one of the characters?
No, it was like a dad.
Oh, okay.
And he started
every once in a while.
He yelled at each other. I don't remember. I don't know. I don't like confrontation. That's not something I've stored in the memory bank. I remember the anger, but I couldn't even tell you what he looked like if you put him in a lineup.
You know what, Hal? I don't like confrontation either. You know what I do like? Topics, and there are many more to discuss. So please reach out to us via email at wegotThisPodcast@gmail.com, or
you can find us on all the social media at We Got This Podcast, except for Instagram, where we are at We Got This Show. And you can share your favorite daylight saving memories at our Facebook group, facebook.com/group/We Got This Podcast. Thank you to producer Ken Plume, researcher Kate McManus, graphic designer Uri Kelman, and QA engineer Jen Alba.
And thanks, of course, to our musicians, Jonathan Dinerstein and Mike Furman, for our score and theme song, respectively. And thanks to you, the people of the world, with whom we would love to spend that extra hour of sunlight just out enjoying a cool evening, looking at a sunset, and then as soon as it's set, running away from the duskers. But aside from that, just having a delightful hour with you. You are the reason we do this show. We couldn't do it without you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. For Hal Lublin, I'm Mark Gagliardi.
For Mark Gagliardi, I'm Hal Lublin. And don't worry, everybody. We got this.
We got this.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows
supported directly
by you.